Good day guys, my name is Abdulbasit and I'm a web developer. In this video, I'm just going to briefly introduce JavaScript. So what is JavaScript and why is this JavaScript so special? JavaScript was initially created to make web pages alive. Initially. Or you have HTML to create the layout of the page to the page itself. Then CSS for the styling. Then JavaScript was used to make the web pages alive. That's for interactivity. The programs in this language are called scripts. So when you write your own program in JavaScript, that piece of code is called scripts. They can be written right in the web pages HTML and run automatically as the page loads. The second thing is that why is it called JavaScript? When JavaScript was created, it initially had another name, which was LiveScript, but Java was popular at that time. So it was decided that positioning a new language as a younger brother of Java will help. So that was JavaScript. So there is JavaScript. I hope you get that. But as it evolved, JavaScript became a fully independent language with its own specification called ECMAScript. And now it has no relation to Java at all. How can I download JavaScript? Okay, if I want to, for example, if I want to code in Python, I have to download Python, and I have to download. How can I download JavaScript? Well, you don't need to do that. JavaScript is already running in your own browser. Whether it's a laptop you have, or a tablet, or a smartphone, you already have JavaScript in it. Well, you're thinking, how is that possible? Yes, JavaScript is free for everyone to use. Free. Whether you are rich, whether you are poor, or whatever. Just joking. Today, JavaScript can execute not only in the browser, but also on the server, or actually on any device that have a special program called the JavaScript engine. Well, what you understand here is that you don't need to download JavaScript. You already have JavaScript running in your phone. As I stated before, that JavaScript was initially created to make web pages alive. Today, JavaScript does not only execute in the browser, but also on the server, or actually on any device that have a special program called JavaScript engine. So what is JavaScript engine? What is JavaScript engine? So now, when you look at the browser, be it Chrome, Opera, Firefox, Microsoft Edge, Safari, or the rest, these are called browsers. They have an embedded engine inside, sometimes called JavaScript virtual machine. When you still don't get, okay, this is it. Each browser has something to be able, so that when you run your JavaScript on the browser will understand your code. So for it to understand the code, the Java, let me say, okay, for example, you need an interpreter, maybe another language. Someone is, let me say, for example, I'm an Hausa man from Nigeria, and want to speak to someone, an Indian person, and I don't understand India, the person doesn't understand Hausa. How can we communicate? Then I look for someone called an interpreter who will come and stand and speak to it. Let's not talk about NG as interpreter. So this is something that that takes the JavaScript code and makes the engine understand it. So different browsers have different engine, so they have different ways the JavaScript is being run in the browser. For example, Chrome, it is V8. For Opera, it is Sharakan. Sharakan. Forgive me for not pronouncing it well. It is C, but it's pronounced as Sharakan. For Firefox, it's Spider Monkey. For the rest. So the next thing, how does the engine work? I've just written the basics for you. What happens is that the engine, if it's embedded, if it's in the browser, it reads the scripts. That's, if you have forgotten, I told you what scripts are. Programs in this language are called scripts. So that's your JavaScript codes. You call scripts. So it takes the scripts, reads the scripts, then convert it to a machine language for the machine to be able to understand, for the browser to be able to understand. Then it runs it perfectly. For example, you're Englishman, someone wrote a message to you in let me say in the Chinese language, and you don't understand it. You have to translate it first for you to be able to understand. Maybe it's just some instructions for you to follow to do something. So after translating it, you now follow the instruction. That's just what an engine is. So the next question is, where is JavaScript used? You can use JavaScript in the client side, which are called front end. This is this is the most popular place where JavaScript is being used in the client side, together with what HTML and CSS, just to add what interactivity to web pages. I think I'll explain this the other time. It's also used in the front side for creating what animations, building or drawing all kinds of interfaces or diagrams. So as you can see here, web, just the front end, the client side of web pages is divided into three: the HTML part, the CSS, and the JavaScript. The HTML defines what the content of the web pages, while CSS what specifies the layout, that's for styling, while what JavaScript what is used what to program the behavior of web pages. Okay, when you click on these, what will happen when you, even though there are still some CSS animations and things that can do that, but JavaScript is mainly used for doing that, and some complex stuffs too. The second thing is what the server side, which is what the back end. So before, we only had JavaScript at the front end, the client side, but now, all thanks to Node.js, which is a JavaScript runtime, we can now what run JavaScript at the server side. So for example, you being a front-end developer, you learn JavaScript. So when you want to join with back-end to become a full stack, you're thinking, oh, I still have to learn another language, maybe like Python, Java. No, you don't need that anymore. You can still move with your knowledge of JavaScript using Node.js, which is a JavaScript runtime. So Node allows JavaScript to be used for simple server tasks like database access and web hosting and many other things. So the next thing is desktop apps. How can we use it? With what we call the Electron framework. We can create a full-blown desktop apps with website-like tool sets. So you being a web developer, you can still develop desktop apps using Electron framework. This Electron framework is just a tool using both Node.js and Chromium. The next thing is mobile apps. Well, with the help of React Native and NativeScript, these are frameworks. We can develop mobile apps with web technologies with the feel and performance of native apps. You have as many as possible. Well, you can even use JavaScript in machine learning using libraries like TensorFlow.js. Well, you can still use JavaScript in progressive web apps, which are progressive web apps are web applications with some mobile app powers. What does that mean by mobile app? That is, they have offline mode enhancement and some performance included. You can Google about progressive web apps to learn more about them. So let me summarize what this video is talking about. Just talking about JavaScript. What is JavaScript? JavaScript was initially created as a browser-only language, but it's now used in many other environments as well, like the server side, like in creating desktop apps, mobile apps, in machine learning, progressive web apps, and many other places. Today, JavaScript has a unique position as the most widely adopted browser language with full integration with HTML and CSS. That's why I love JavaScript. Every browser you have, you don't need to download any JavaScript. Continue using your JavaScript. The next one is there are many other languages that get transpiled to JavaScript and provide certain features. It is recommended to take a look at them at least briefly after mastering JavaScript. You don't need to worry about that. But if you've mastered JavaScript, you can maybe, what this means is that you can write code in other languages and it can be transpiled into JavaScript. Maybe you can write a program in Python and it can be transpiled into JavaScript. So that's all. Hope you enjoyed the lecture. So if you want to read more about JavaScript, you can check the documents at MDN. Thank you for watching. See you next time.